I knew that if I basically left that environment, that I wouldn't really be able to help. So I kind of survived somehow. And then you learn, the basics and conventional medicine, of course, and drugs, and how every disease has a protocol. And then you get to the practice, and you realize that many of these drugs actually harm animals, and that they don't really work as well, or they don't work at all. And for one drug that you give, you have to give 3 more drugs to correct the symptoms, that the side effects that these drugs cause. So yeah, so that's and I always knew as a human, as a growing up human being, that natural healing is somehow better. And I saw it with my grandpa, and he was an amazing herbalist, and he taught me about herbs, and I also suffered from very severe allergies when I was a teenager. I was not able to breathe through the nose for 6 months out of the year. So when I was 19, 20, I started kind of looking into different books and started reading. I don't know what made me or who made me, probably the allergies. But I kind of cured my allergies, my hay fever, just through diet and through following some of this advice. And it was really interesting. So it has, and it gave me the opportunity to kind of compare. But I've always been really curious and a little bit of I'm just going to use the word disturber when it comes to, I never really like to follow protocol. So whenever something doesn't work or didn't work, I started to look elsewhere and started to kind of use more common sense. And the healing system that we use now, or I've kind of developed and we call healing cycle, is really simple. And when I talk to some of my clients and my team and so on, we kind of, I'm perplexed. It is so simple. The natural principles of healing are so simple, and it is so surprising how very few people kind of understand it. And I think that what happened with the medical system, obviously it has been hacked, and people have lost the ability to, because we are so used to the status quo, that people don't even question when they go to the doctor. They expect the doctor to prescribe some medication. They don't question often enough. And as I'm getting older, I see many of my classmates and friends kind of like being in that mindset because, they don't work in medicine, or they have not had the blessing and opportunity to see what can be done. And it is very painful and frustrating. And also with dogs, and other animals, you see what is being done to them. And 80%, in my mind, 80% of the medical conditions that we deal with could be either prevented or treated or helped significantly without any use of drugs. And I'm not necessarily saying that it has to be like medication is needed sometimes.
Yeah.
And I'm not one of those orthodox people who say, I would never take any medication, but it can be reduced dramatically. I would say 80-90% reduction is easy. And the problem is that when you see how much money drug companies and pet food companies make, reduction of their business by 80-90% would be an absolute disaster. So the marketing machine and the kind of, we as humans are our mind is open to the messages that are being sent to us, and whatever we are being told, we start believing. And unless we are kind of rebellious a little bit, or curious, or have some sort of life experience that is very traumatic or life altering, and then we go, oh my goodness, this, it has to be different or has to be changed. We just go with what we are told. And it's frustrating, actually. That's the right word. It's frustrating to see. And at the same time, I know that there are many things that I don't know and will be learning until I drop dead. Hopefully not soon, but there's still a lot of learning to be done.
Let's get on to the nitty-gritty of when people get a puppy. Before someone gets, whether it's a puppy or an adult dog they're bringing into their lives, what are some of the key things, Peter, that you would encourage people to do their homework on first? Because a lot of people, particularly in the lockdown, I don't know what it's like. I know you share your time between a few different locations, but in the UK, we've had so many people at the start of the lockdowns went out and got dogs, and they knew nothing about how to raise a dog successfully. And so we've had a lot of disastrous consequences from that. So in an ideal situation, we'd encourage people to do their homework beforehand. Where would you want people to start with that?
I think that the first kind of exploration has to start with us. Do we want a dog because other people are getting dog? Do we want a dog because we are temporarily lonely? Do we want a dog because we want to solve some personal challenges and issues? I think that we really need to be ready for parenting, for parenthood. Like, I think that it equals to having a child, even though it's slightly different. I think every dog, every cat, every pet deserves to have a good home. And people think that maybe I get a dog sitter, maybe I get someone else to look after them when I'm going on holidays and so on. It doesn't really work that way. They suffer when they don't have at least 2 walks a day, and I'm just going to say 2 good hours a day plus. They suffer when they're alone. I think there are some solutions to that. If people are working and they can't be at home with their dog all the time, maybe there's an older lady or a gentleman who can take their dog, and they would be, they don't want to have their own dog because they're senior and they're worried that these dogs would be left behind. But there's some solutions. The other thing that I think is kind of important to look at is budget and see whether we can afford to feed our pets well, whether we can afford to either get insurance for them, and I would always recommend insurance, or if not, whether our budget would allow an emergency of, let's say, 5,000-10,000 pounds, because it can happen, right?
No. I've been there.
Yeah. There's a misperception, and many rescue organizations and many dog shelters misperceive that happy dogs have to have a backyard, which is not true. Dogs are denning animals. They like to be together with their humans and with other dogs. And when they're taken out, they can be in a condo, in a small bachelor suite, and they're absolutely fine. It's more about how engaged they are, how much exercise they get, and so on. So that's one part, just kind of looking at at our living condition. And I also recommend people to really inquire whether emotionally they're ready to care for someone else, mentally, whether they have the capacity at that moment. They may be going through trauma, which is not a bad thing to get a dog, but they have to be ready to be there for their pet or have a backup in a family, and making sure that the dog is familiar with the rest of the friends in the family. So if something happens, they can step in. Also, last will, it's super important. And I kind of talking about that, but it's super important to have an arrangement for their pet. So all these are thoughts that people should just kind of put on the list and solve. The next one is also whether they choose rescue dog, which is always preferred, or a breed.